Okay, in the last video we made sure that our object pool worked, and in this video we will actually create some rounds and fix our waves so that the difficulty on those increase every single wave. So the first wave will only be one monster, and then the next wave will be two monsters, and so on. This is just the way that I'm going to increase the difficulty, but you can also change other stuff around, of course. Maybe you don't want one extra monster per wave, but it's totally up to you. So for now, let's just try to add some extra mobs per wave. And besides that, we will also need some kind of indicator here on the screen so that we know what wave we are at. So let's make the indicator first. To add the indicator, we will simply add some text. So go to your canvas, right click and say UI and text. And this text will be wave text, for example. So this one will indicate what wave we are at the moment, and actually, yeah, let's just keep it like that. We can write wave and then colon and then 0. So this is the first wave. When it's 0, we haven't started yet, and when we click the next wave button, it will go to 1. So this is our first wave. So I would like some colors on this text here. First of all, I'm going to take the font and change it into that Carter 1 font I'm using. The font size will be 30. And now you can see the text over here disappeared, and it's because that it is too large to be contained inside this box here. So you can simply just take and expand this box a little so that you can see the text. And then you can say that you want to align it correctly. So the alignment here will be center and center here. So it's aligned inside the middle of this box here. Just makes it way easier for us to place the text correctly. You can make this box larger or smaller. It's totally up to you. I'm just going to make it a little bigger, so there's some space on both sides here. Okay, the next thing is that we need to change the color. So I'm going to select the color here on the text and make it white. Besides that, I am going to add two components, an outline and a shadow. Maybe you can't see all of it for my webcam here, but I'm going to add component and write shadow, add the shadow component, and add component and write outline, and add the outline component. And it looks like this. If I move this one up, you'll see that it has this outline component here, and move this one up, it has outline and the shadow components here. Okay, so these two components we will need to have here, and I'm just going to move them down again here so we have the text. Okay, besides that, we will have to, or I would like to change the color of the 0 here. And I would like it to be lime green. You can change it to any color you want. Maybe you want red or blue or something. But I'm going to add a tag here called color equals lime. Then end the tag. Then go on the other side of 0 and open the tag and finish it with color like this. So if you write it like that, color equals lime, and then the number you want, and then end tag, well, then you'll see that it writes the color in the number in green lime color. I just think it looks better. Okay, besides that, we need to place it correctly. I would like my waves to be written here in the top, and then I'm going to take my wave button and move it a little down so it's underneath here. So my wave button will be placed here, and the number of waves will be written in the top. I'm not going to place it over here because I would like my lives to be written over here later when we add that. That's why I'm placing it in the middle. So right now there are no functionality for the button, for the text. So we'll have to go to our game manager. So open up your game manager script. And I'm just going to move this into the screen so we can see something right here. One second, I'm just going to adjust it so it fills out the screen. There we go. Okay, so when we have the script open, we will have to add the actual amount of waves we will have on the screen. So we need to add a new variable here. And this variable, just move my other one out here. There we go. This variable will be placed in the top of the game manager script. So maybe after your currency, you can make a private integer called wave. This is the actual wave number that we are using right now. So let's just set it to 0 from the get-go because it's 0, and as you can see, it's also 0 in here. So besides the actual wave number, we will also need a reference to the text. So make a private text called wave text. Okay, so this will have a reference to the actual text we have out here, so that we can change this wave text. So make this into a serialized field, and when you've done that, you can save and go back to Unity, and then go and find your game manager and see the empty wave text here, and take your wave text and drag it into this position here, so that we can change the wave text from our script. When you've done that, we need to go to our start wave function. Let's see where it is by our handle. There's spawn wave, and we call spawn wave from start wave right here. In here, that we will need to increase the wave number. So we need to say wave plus plus, because every time we click the wave button, we would like to increase it so that it goes to the next wave, right? So we can see that first time we click it, it's wave 1, and next time it's wave 2, and so on. Okay. Besides that, we will need to say wave text dot text equals string dot format wave colon color equals lime, and then make a scope and write 0, and then color int tag here, and I'll explain this in a second. And then wave. Okay, so we will set the wave text equal to this format here. So we write wave colon, exactly the same as we have here, wave colon, then a space, and then the number with lime color, right? And that means that we say color lime, and then I write a scope and 0, and 0 is actually going to be replaced with wave out here, and wave number is 1 first time, so it will replace this with 1, and next time it will be replaced with 2, and so on. And then we enter tag. So it's exactly the same text as we wrote before inside the Unity editor. Okay, so let's see if this works so far. So we start the game, and let's see. And when I click the first time, it's wave 1, click again, wave 2, wave 3. Okay, so now we can actually update this, but the waves are not correct yet, right? We are just spawning a lot of monsters, and we can keep we are able to keep spawning these when the game is running, and we don't want to do that. We want to start a wave and let the wave finish, and then we would like to click the next wave button again. So we need to hide the next wave button when we start a wave, and it needs to be hidden until the wave is over. Okay, so let's do that. So to do that, jump back into the game manager script, and after you start the coroutine for spawning the wave, you can save wave button. We don't have a reference to it, so let's do that. So we have a tower button, it's not that. We need to make a reference to a wave button. So under your currency text, you can write private game object, let's say that, wave button, and serialize it. So we need to make a reference to the button in the editor. So remember to save and find the wave button here. Take the next wave button here from the hierarchy and move it to the place in the game manager. So now we have a reference to the actual wave button, so we can hide it from the script. So let's go to start wave here and say wave button dot set active false. Okay, so if we save this and jump back into Unity and run it one more time, see, we click the next wave button and then it disappears. Okay, so now we just started a wave or a round, and we will not be able to click this one again to start another wave. So now we need to figure out when the round ends, so that we know to how to show this wave button again, right? Because right now we don't know how to show it, or we can't show it because we don't know when the wave ends. So we need to add some more functionality so we know when a wave is over. Okay. So to do that, we will need to keep track of the amount of active monsters, right? So every time we spawn a monster, we need to add it to a list, so that we can keep track of that list and check, okay, are there any monsters on this list? If there are monsters on the list, well, then the wave is still going on and we're still in the same round, right? But if there are no monsters on the list, well, then the wave is over and we need to show the next wave button again so that we can buy towers and all those things. So maybe it sounds a little confusing, but let's try to do it here. We need to create a new list. So let's make a list, not an array list, just a list. And if we can't find list, it's because we need to include using system.collections.generic here. And it needs to contain game objects and call it active monsters equals new list. Okay. So here we have a list of active monsters. Let's make it private just from the start here. So when we have this list here, we need to add all active monsters this list, and we can do that from the spawn monster function. Here we're starting a wave, and here we are creating the monsters here, right? So we have a monster here, and basically, as we can see, we actually have a monster of type monster. So we can actually go back here, and change this object to monster instead of game object, because we have the raw monster right down there. So let's not make it into a game object later. Okay, so we have the monster. We will have to spawn the monster, and we just did, and then we have to say active monsters.add monster right here. So now we added the monster. This means every time we spawn a monster, it will be added to the active monsters list. So every single active monster we have in the game is on this list now. And this means we can look at that list and check if it has some monsters, and if it has monsters, then the wave is still going. And this means we will have to remove the monsters from this list as well. So we can make a function called public void remove monster, and it takes in a monster. And this function actually takes active monsters.remove monster, so it removes a specific monster from this list, which means every time a monster hits the portal, it will have to remove itself from the active monsters list, right? And this means if it removes itself from the active monsters list, well, then at some point it will be empty, and when the monsters list is empty, well, then we know that we are done with the wave. Okay. So we need to check the count on the monsters list. And just to make it easier for ourselves, let's just make a property up here so we can reuse it later. So public bool called wave active, and this one is true as long as there are monsters running on the field, and it's false if there are no monsters on the field. So we will return active monsters dot count larger than 0. So this one will return false if the count is less than 0, and true if the count is larger than 0, right? So when we check wave active, if wave active is false, well, then there are no monsters left. If wave active is true, well, then the count is larger than 0, which means there are monsters left, and we are not done with the wave. So we can go down here, and down here we can actually say if wave active, there. If a wave is not active, remember the exclamation mark here. Well, if it's not active, if the wave is not active, then no monsters are left on the field. So we can easily say wave button dot set active true. Okay. But now we need to call that remove monster function, because we're not calling it anywhere right now. And we need to call it from the monster itself, because every single monster needs to remove itself from the list whenever it's done being in the game world, right? So let's see, we have a release function here on the monster, and the release function is called when the monster hits the portal. So we can actually say when we are done running in the game, well, then we can say game manager.instance.remove monster, and we need to remove a specific monster. Well, we are inside the monster script here, which means we can write this. So the monster removes itself from the monster list by using the remove monster function we just created right here. So when the monster hits the portal, it tells the game manager that it calls remove monster, sends itself as a parameter, removes itself from the active monsters list, checks if there are more monsters left in the game world based on our wave active bool here, which is true if there are monsters left in the active monsters list, and false if there are no monsters left. And then we set the wave button to true if it's the case that there are no monsters left. I hope this makes sense. Let's test it to see how it works. So click next wave. The button disappears and the monster runs over the field here all the way to the red portal. And then we'll see that the button will spawn up here again when it hits the red portal. And boom. When it's done despawning and removes itself, well, then the next wave is ready and we can click again to spawn the next wave. So right now it's not much of a wave, it's one monster. Let's just add the wave functionality for this video before we actually end it, so that we have some actual waves here. So to do that, it's actually very simple. We need to make a for loop here. So let's make a for loop. And this for loop needs to run at specific times, right? It needs to run wave. So first wave, it spawns one monster because the wave is equal to 1. Next wave, it spawns 2 monsters because wave is equal to 2. And that's the way I'm increasing it. You can do whatever you want. You can do it in different ways if you want to. But I just think this is the way I would like to do it. And yeah, what do we want to do? We want to put everything inside that for loop here. So that we actually start spawning stuff. So let's just take everything here and move it inside the for loop. And now we have a for loop that runs based on the amount of waves we have, right? And we increase waves up here before we start the coroutine for calling it spawn wave, which means wave will be increased before we start using it down here for spawning random monsters. It's very important you have everything inside the for loop. For example, if you would put this one outside here, the random, well, then it will spawn the same monster X amount of times based on the wave, right? So we need to create a new random index every single time we spawn a new monster, so we can get mixed wave with 2 green and 1 yellow. Yeah, we don't have a yellow. 2 green and 1 red, for example, and so on. Yes. Yeah, let's try to save this. And click here. And if I click the first time, we spawn 1 monster. And if I click again, I should spawn 2 monsters now. And we just did. So now we have a wave system, right? But there's one problem here. As you can see, I can set my towers up here and the monsters will ignore them because there's not generated a new path, right? So the monsters are just walking through my towers right now. And besides that, I shouldn't even be able to place towers, at least in the way I created the game. I don't want to be able to place towers while a wave is running, right? Because I don't want to recalculate my path all the time. And it also makes the game easier if I can just wall in a monster when it comes here and then it needs to go all the way back, so on. I don't want that. So we need to do something so that we can't spawn towers when the wave is on, right? And to do that, we need to go back to our script. First of all, we need to regenerate the path, because even so, let's say that we play the game right, even if we place the towers here, well, it works maybe with the first wave here, but we would like to recalculate the path, because maybe I built something new in between rounds. So when the round is over, I would like to recalculate the path before I start spawning new monsters, right? So to do that, we can just say in start of the spawn wave function, we say level manager dot instance dot generate path. So then we're sure that every time we start spawning new monsters here, we just regenerate our path, so that we make sure that every single monster, every single wave has the correct newest updated path with all the new towers we just placed. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we don't want to be able to build towers when the game is running, right? So let's see here, buy towers buys a tower. This one picks a tower. So if we go to the pick tower function, we can also say in the F7 and wave active. So we only want to be able to pick a tower if the wave isn't active. Okay? So this means that I'm not able to click my buttons and buy towers or click select towers when a wave is active, right? So let's try to do this. So this means if I play the game now and place my towers, and don't worry about the monsters lapping over the towers right now, we will also fix that so that they will not be in front of the towers when they pass them and so on. So I click here, spawn a new monster, and now you can see I'm not able to click my towers. I have enough gold or enough currency, but I'm not able to click the towers right now because the wave is going on. That's exactly what I want. I don't want to be able to build new towers while the wave is running. And now you can see the wave ended, and this means that I can build my towers once again here, as you can see. So now I'm able to build towers again. And I run here, let's see, it should still take the best path. And as you can see, it also does that. It takes the correct path around the map now. Yes. So that's basically what we want to do in this video. We wanted to fix the wave system so we can see which wave. We want to fix the fact that we could spawn more monsters all the time. So now we can generate correct waves, and we can't spawn or create new towers now while the waves are running. So that's it for this video. In the next video, I think we should start maybe working a little on the I don't know if we should do player health or if we should start going towards making the towers attack. I'll see what I get the time to do first. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and remember that Constructors is a community found page, so all your support is very important to me. You can support me in lots of different ways. You can support me by following me on Twitter, liking my Facebook page, and subscribing to the channel. Also, you can support me by going to the Patreon page and supporting me there. If you do so, you will be able to download every single project that I've created and all the assets that are connected with that. And you can also go to the bottom page here and download one of my project as a standalone product. So thank you very much for watching.